Hello, my name is Angela Cleo Smith, and welcome to our show today, where we will discuss discipline that restores. Our guest today is going to take us through a pathway where they're going to teach us a little bit about accountability, responsibility, discipline, and conflict resolution. Let's meet our guest. Hello, today's guests are Alton McSween, and we call him Coach, so today we're going to call you Coach, if you don't mind. How are you?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
Glad you're here. And then we have Jonathan Bradley. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Thanks. I want to thank you both for being here today. And just so the audience knows, these two are my friend and colleague in the work that we do. But what's really important is what these two do, because they are making a difference in the lives of so many. And we're going to talk to, first let's talk to you, Coach, about this work, Discipline That Restores. And let's talk about how you got started in conflict resolution. Let's just start there, and then maybe give us a little bit of background on that.
Okay, sure. I first got into restorative justice and the principles of it while I was incarcerated at San Quentin State Prison. And I went to a symposium and really got a better understanding of not just accountability, but just all the people that my bad behavior affected, but specifically the victims that like to be called survivors.
Okay.
And the accountability issue came up where I had to be accountable. There's no, for a long time I blamed other people or other circumstances on why I ended up where I did. And once I was able to get the accountability part down, I was able to do some restorative principles involved, and that's repairing the harm. I fully understand I can't undo the things I did, but I do, it's so important to, when you victimize someone, to let them know that you understand what you've done to them and try and repair the harm.
So after 12 years in prison, San Quentin, you decided that this is something that you want to do, and you talk about restorative justice. Just so that for the audience who don't know what restorative justice, just in a nutshell, could you explain what that means?
Our current system, when you commit a crime, the questions generally asked are what happened, who did it, and how much time we could give the person. And that's our retributive system that we have now. And restorative justice is more of what was the harm done, who caused the harm, and who was harmed, and what can be done to repair that, to restore things back to where they were before the violation occurred.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jonathan. All right, so you're doing a lot of work in the community, and you've been doing some things for a while. Why don't you give us a little bit of background before we get it started into, getting in the crust of our conversation today?
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about you when it comes to discipline that restores.
You mean like sort of the restorative justice end of it?
Yeah, this restorative justice.
So I think the idea behind, sort of the principles behind restorative justice requires people to talk about the harm, basically. Harms, needs, obligations, right? So, with a punitive approach to that, it just really deals with the person who committed the crime and what should their punishment be. And so it seemed to me to resonate that, wait a minute, I think people need to talk about these things. If somebody's harmed, then how does putting them in jail fix that, right? It seems to be that's what everybody thinks, though, but we really know that doesn't really fix it. And it's actually almost even easier to go to jail, not have to talk about it, not have to say anything about it, not have to ever face anyone that you've done something to. Because I've had youth in my room that I have to talk to sometime about what I might consider to be something really small, really trivial, but of course the law treats it very seriously. It could be a felony. They were in a stolen car. And they have trouble talking about it. They have trouble telling me what they did and why they did it. And they want to fix it, they just don't know how sometimes. And really that talking about it piece is really key,
So, for the past year, I've always mentioned that I'm working on a dissertation and I'm writing about bullying, and I brought in this restorative practice so as soon as I learned about what it was all about. It seemed to fit to creating a campaign for bullying, an bullying program. So in your work, Jonathan, for the last year, I've been in schools working with young people and in the restorative circles and the restorative process. So these aren't actual students who have done any harm in the community or a crime. Based off of the work that you do, could you tell me, like, if there's a comparison of kids in schools who haven't done anything wrong yet? Maybe. Hopefully they don't. But let's talk about your work that you're doing in comparison to that.
Yeah, so what comes out a lot of times is that they are doing things, they just haven't got caught yet.
Okay.
You know, and that's kind of what happens, you know. And with the bullying aspect, you know, it's important to sort of have a little bit of a toolkit. I've always been one who likes to have these tools, you know, and I saw restorative justice as just another tool that I could pull out of my toolkit to apply for a certain specific set of circumstances that might come up, you know. And so you're talking about kids who are in the criminal justice system or getting touched with the criminal justice system, even if it's causing a disruption in the classroom, right? Or kids who sort of aren't getting caught, still doing some of those disruptive things. And maybe, you know, because, you know, it's always sort of the smarter ones, right? They figure out how to, they know exactly how far to go without going too far. And sometimes, most of the kids that I get, they just go too far, you know.
Right.
They take something too far. And there's several cases I could sort of talk about a little bit without telling you the names. And it's typical middle school stuff where you have a young man in the classroom, he's messing with a young girl. The girl doesn't necessarily see him as a threat, but he is harassing her. He is causing her a little bit of stress, but she kind of brushes it away, brushes it off. Well, then you compound that with another incident that happens in the same day with other young men. So other young men see the interaction between the young lady at school. They think that, oh, well, wait a minute, if he can do it, I can do it too. But they don't really know how to necessarily do it. And so when they go to do something, they do too much. And the girl doesn't know them, and she doesn't like them. And so they get treated a different way than the one who is doing similar stuff. But kind of just, he's just annoying. That's just how he is. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was trying to think of a comparison with you, Coach. You were working on recovery and accountability when you were sent away for all these years. And fortunately, you were able to get out earlier than that was projected, right?
Correct.
So in a comparison situation to what Jonathan's doing, who's trying to help young people who have committed a crime, but get this second chance. And with you, you're now working with re-entry felons, if you will. And how could you see like that similar? Because it's almost like they're giving another chance too, because you have these programs in place. Could you talk more about that?
I think so much with reentry is the reentry process has to begin well before you get out. It's a term we use, getting out before you get out, before you physically walk out those doors.
Right.
Because if you don't have the tools in place and the ability to use those tools, you're going to end up right back in that revolving door. And one of the major things is being accountable and understanding what you've done. The term we use, the little acronym AIR. You know, you want some accountability, some integrity, and being responsible. And the integrity, they're all important, but the integrity one really stands out in that it's easy to do the right thing when no one's looking, but the true test of integrity is what you do when no one's around. And I think that's what we do with so many guys when they get out. We have a program at San Quentin, California Reentry Institute, where we start guys 2 years before they hit the door. And the major thing that we want them to do is having a safe place to go when they get out. And all these other tools will come into place, because if you have if you've taught someone all these tools and they still have nowhere to go when they get out, it's really difficult. It's difficult even when you have a place to go out to re-enter back into society, especially if you've been down a significant amount of time.
Interesting. Jonathan, we were talking earlier, and like I was saying, sometimes this work either comes to you or you're placed in a position like Coach. Was there something that made you get into this type of work where you want to make a difference to to young boys and girls as well, right?
Yeah.
In the community. Could you tell us about that?
I would say no is the short answer, but so, what happens a lot of times is because of a situation that I was in, a certain job that I had, which was not restorative, but resident advisor, and a resident advisor at the student family housing for UC Berkeley. And so what that allowed me to do was have to gather some conflict resolution skills, because we're dealing with people who are in conflict. Sometimes they're from different countries, different walks of life, different age groups, and as you can imagine, all kinds of things come up. And so again, adding mediation to that toolkit was key for me. And so when I got when the opportunity came to do it, I didn't want to do it initially because it was my in-laws who were saying, hey, we're going to this mediation training. You want to come with us? And I was like, no, I don't want to come with you. And they said, well, we're going to stay at the Hyatt Ricky's in Palo Alto. Ooh, that sounds pretty nice. I was like, Hyatt Ricky's, I'm on my way. So I went to the Hyatt Ricky's with them. It was a wonderful training. It was just an amazing training. So I got more out of the training than I did out of being at the Hyatt Ricky's, actually.
Yeah.
But it was a 40-hour training, and it was really professional level sort of training. And so I felt myself sort of not necessarily knowing what I was going to be doing after the training, but there was a whole list of organizations that I could call and apply to volunteer for at that level, right? So after I left the training, I went right to the phone and started calling these organizations, and one of them was now SEEDS, but it was Berkeley Dispute Resolution Service, and I went there and immediately started doing community mediation. But I had training in commercial mediation, which was a little bit of a different world, but I found applying it in a community level was really, it was just key. It was just really taking the skills that I had learned and applying it. So learning it at a commercial level, I really didn't know what to do with that necessarily, but at the community level, I go, well, wait a minute, I can apply this stuff this way. And so from there, it spun into a job with OUSD, training peer mediators in schools. And from there, it was sort of like, okay, well, this is really important. We need to be doing this conflict resolution stuff with these kids at this level, and training kids to do it, and to see the other kids look at their peers who are doing that is just amazing when they go, well, wait a minute, I want to do that too, Mr. Bradley. How can I be involved, and it's just amazing. So I think just getting into it like that and kind of, and not being afraid. I was always one of those kids who wasn't afraid of stuff, so even though I didn't want to do it initially because I just didn't understand it or what I could use it for, found it really useful and really, just really useful in the end, so, and then went on to restorative justice and that kind of stuff, adding other things because, mediation is good for some circumstances and some situations, and then you have this other thing, this circle process. Well, wait a minute, we can involve more people in this and do more work around what's really going on here, and it was really wonderful to be able to use those skills in the school settings.
And for you to mention about skills, again, for me, writing my schoolwork and then coming up with this restorative practices, next thing you know, I'm training to be a mediator. Now I'm a workplace mediator. And it's almost like, okay, we can actually take these skills and use them in so many different areas. And that restorative circle process, now, when I think about you, Coach, you're now speaking, you have speaking engagements all around. Tell us about that. I mean, how this work leads to more work and more work. And not only is it work in a sense of helping others, but it's actually, you can make a living from this as well. So tell us about your speaking engagements and what led to that.
I'm blessed to, like you said, to have a lot of speaking engagements. And what I try and do is just use my story as a vehicle to help others and whatever they're going through. I had a bad problem. I was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and got clean and sober. And so I understand that the dynamics of that disease. I'm a drug counselor now. So I whether it's using restorative justice to get that point across, that's what I try and do. Just try and inform people, interest people, and inspire them to keep going no matter what you're going through. You come from underneath it. And also to never ever forget what you've done. You hold yourself accountable at all costs, but at the same time, don't beat yourself up and have some self-forgiveness for yourself because, like I said earlier, you can't undo what you've done. So that's what I try and do with the speaking engagements, to try and utilize whatever restorative justice type of principles with other audience I happen to be speaking of, because like I said, I took a lot of the groups to San Quentin, and every group, even though they were different focus mainly, they all had some restorative justice principles in them.
Yeah, I mean, again, this work alone, it expands more and more and more, and that's what I'm finding. You know, we just all co-founded and are on the board for Bay Area Alliance for Restorative Practices. All three of us are, and now we're going to actually take this on and go into the communities, help schools, help prisons, help anyone who actually needs it. Even it could be worked in the workplace. I know I was mentioning mediation in the workplace, but restorative practice. And just again, just to touch on what that is, it actually started out of New Zealand when these indigenous people were, a lot of their youth were going to these detention center, and they said, well, wait a minute, we need to bring and have a community and bring back our children, and we're going to handle this. So they did this circle process where you sit in a circle, and Jonathan, why don't you kind of explain what a circle process is all about? And maybe you can explain that a little better.
So with the Maori, they had this way of dealing with conflict, not only conflict, but just sort of, actually they used it for dealing with everything in their lives. And that's what you're talking about. They wanted to say, well, wait a minute, this is a disproportionate sort of contact, which is what we have a problem with here, at least in California, with disproportionate minority contact in the criminal justice system. And so, with the circle, I think what's important is that remember that there's definitely an indigenous sort of roots to it, and I think when you bring that to the practice of it, you have an opening. You have some ceremony that kind of goes with that. Basically, these things are designed just to sort of center people down, get people comfortable with that environment that they're going to be in, and also creating sort of a safe space for people. You have some things like a centerpiece in the center, lots of different things that you can use as a way that people can focus on it. I actually use the centerpiece almost exclusively because I like looking at the centerpiece a lot of times more than I like looking at the people. Not that I don't like looking at people, but when I'm talking about stuff for myself, and I just kind of zone into that centerpiece, and I can be a little bit more open about things. And then you have sort of a talking piece that you will tell maybe a little story behind that where it comes from, how you got it, and you use that basically. That's used, I mean, as you know, as a way for other people to listen, and also for you, the person who has that's the person who speaks, and that's basically you ask for the respect from everybody else around at the circle to respect that. And there are several different types of circles. I mean, even as we're talking about it, I just think about all the different types of ways that we've even used it for, not only for harm, but also for celebration. When I was in West Oakland Middle School, we used it. I got to tell you, so coming out of the circle training, it was interesting to learn about all the sort of practices that you do for openings. For example, using sage. And if you can imagine me lighting sage inside of a OUSD school, passing the sage around. These are middle school students. They don't know anything about this, but it's kind of, ooh, ah, what is it? Ooh. And it has that sort of, ooh, ah way of like, okay, we're all in here together. We're all part of this. I'm not the one in charge. You're in charge. Everybody's in charge of themselves. And when you give over that power, or you let people know that we're all powerful in here, that changes everything, and sometimes it takes adults a little bit longer to kind of shed those hats that they have, when they're in there. Even in our conferencing process, we have the police in there, and the police are very good at sort of, they go around one time and say, this is what happened, this could have happened to you, but you got this chance. But then that hat comes off, that uniform comes off. It's amazing. I mean, they still have it on, but they've actually just stepped right outside of that and into this whole circle thing. Whereas the DAs have a little bit of a harder time doing that.
They're still struggling with it, but at the same time, we might understand that. Yeah, because when you are doing that circle process, it's almost like there's no hierarchy, and that's why I associated the restorative justice circle practice with bullying, because bullying is defined as this imbalance of power. But when you get into a restorative circle, there's no hierarchy. You might be the circle keeper. Have you experienced, I call it the magic now, it's not known to be called magic.
Oh, it's magic.
Right.
Do you see it as
Absolutely.
magic? But tell me about your experience with the circle.
The first circles I experienced were in San Quentin. And as you can imagine, with you have so much prison politics, be it racial, be what you can and cannot talk about. I saw just a transformation from the circle. We'd start that circle in the morning during one of the programs, symposiums we'd have, and there's a lot of little intensity there and whatnot. And people really didn't want to share and talk. And as the day went on, you saw those barriers, those walls come down. People were more open. People felt really safe. And when people feel in a safe place, they know things. What's said in that circle is going to stay there, confidentiality-wise, and they open up. And when that open up, just promotes so much healing. Someone in the circle might say something that he's sharing, and someone else can relate to it. Like, heck, I'm going through that too, and it's okay to talk about this. And you just see the transformation from the morning to the afternoon. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and for you to say about the safe space, that's what I find with even the young kids in the schools, is that sometimes they don't get that opportunity to be heard. And in that circle, they know that they're safe. They've come up with those values and guidelines. And Jonathan, why don't you tell us a little bit, if you can tell us what values and guidelines are about and how that works in the circle process.
Sure. I think those are sort of the pillars of a circle. So when you sort of trying to create a community or a space where people are going to treat each other respectfully, then, but you got to start from a sort of a foundational place of, well, what are our values going to be in this circle today? And then you have to get consensus on that, especially if you're really serious about having that magic and having it move. If you don't do that, then you have nothing else to sort of build on if things fall down. But you always have those values and guidelines. Sometimes you have to write them down and kind of point to them as you go on. But those are sort of the pillars of circles.
And values could be respect,
Yep.
confidentiality, some of those other things. And the good part is that everyone agrees on them. And so they make that circle even stronger, more powerful, and at the same time, it's safe. So now restorative justice and restorative justice practices might be new to a lot of people. I know a year and a few months, it was very, very new to me when Sharon Tom, who's one of our board members, introduced it to me. That's when I learned so much about it. So with the restorative practice, do you think that this is something that's going to be around for a while, or is it something that we find that's going to just go away because it may not be working? Let's start with you, Coach.
I think it's not only going to be around; it's here to stay. I think so many people that have been affected by crime or have on either side of the crime. Our current system doesn't work. It's failed miserably. So why not try something else? Okay. And I think part of the issue with a lot of the recidivism rate that we have with guys coming in and out of prison is they've missed that restorative justice principles of it. And I think if you can keep guys from going back to prison, but more importantly, keeping guys from going to prison to start with, that's huge. And that's why I really believe that when people find out more and more about restorative justice and restorative practices, they're going to be on board with it. Actually see it work.
And we had asked your wife to come in today, Julie Bradley, and she was not able to come, but she teaches students at Cal. So it's almost like it's setting these young people up to do this work. So, I mean, that almost answers it in and of itself. But Jonathan, could you tell me, do you see this restorative practice going to be around for a while?
Yeah, definitely. It's been around for a while. Mm-hmm. We just sort of here in America are just sort of as people who are sort of a little bit detached from tradition, mm-hmm. are just sort of coming back to it. Native American people have been using this for years. They still use this. Circles are very powerful thing. It's just probably the most powerful thing on earth, I think, the circle. And so I think what happens, though, is that the criminal justice system, they're very careful about this because I think it's in our terminology and the way we're presenting it to the criminal justice system. So, for example, I think what my mind is thinking now, the idea is that it needs to be presented as something that enhances, right? That makes better what you're already doing.
Right.
Because those pillars of sort of criminal justice, I mean, when you think of like the Supreme Court, right? It's not going anywhere, right?
Right.
It's going to be there, you know. So how do we as restorative justice practitioners, how do we make them say, it's okay to be doing what you're doing? Because they don't have a fear that it's going to take over what they're doing, because what you're doing is enhancing what we're doing. And that's sort of our way in. And then once you're in, you know, things are going to take a life of their own, you know, so.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be around. And I should have my doctorate degree before the end of the year. And I only say that, and I'm tired of talking about, oh yeah, I'm in school, because eventually that school part's going to end. So then I can put it into practice. But my job that I see for this work is to be that advocate for it. And train as many people as we can, because we're going to need practitioners out there. If you're interested in something that can help our community, especially our children, and I'm talking to the audience to say, check out restorative justice practices. We need more. We have more work than we do practitioners. So it's going to be a great career opportunity, but it's something that you have to choose within yourself to do this type of work. It's not for everybody. You have to have a compassion for people, for helping young people especially, if you can, and then for adults who we can give a second chance. Once you've already committed a crime or some type of infraction, then this will be the time where you can actually use this work, train these people, and I can go talk to that state legislature and talk to them and make sure that they're listening, because there is a bill right now, AB 420 for schools. They're saying they're suspending too many children. So what is it that we can do? Put them in this category of willful defiance. And we want to stop that. So AB 420 is saying, what is going to be the alternative? It doesn't say it's going to be restorative justice, but we're going to push and say, well, there is something out there, restorative justice practice, and it's working. And the more that I research it, and the more that people are talking about it, it's here to stay. And with that said, our time is up. You know, I know, Jonathan's like, no, I want to talk more, right? Yeah, it's over. But this will give me the opportunity to say thank you. Thank you so much for all the wonderful work you're doing in the community, and keep up the good work. Share that knowledge about restorative practices. I think it's something that's going to be here to stay, you know, because I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be that advocate. I'm going to make a lot of noise. If I can use a medium like this, then that's definitely going to be my way. So thank you for being here. And I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something about restorative justice practices and then discipline that restores. So I'm just going to say goodbye for now, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.